We're studying. Finally, after 3 weeks, we're back studying about the kings again of Israel and Judah. And we're taking out the last years, the last times of King Asa, who was king of Judah. Now, Asa was a good king. He did many great things. He removed many of the things from Judah that were not supposed to be there. Anyway, even his grandmother had set up a thing to worship, and he caused her to be removed from being queen. Now, I don't know whether she was actually queen or that was just a title of authority or something like that, a position of honor maybe. But anyway, we know that the Bible talks well of King Asa because we've already studied about him in 1 Kings. Fortunately, there's more in 2 Chronicles chapter 15, and beginning with verse 17, it talks about, but the high places were not taken away out of Israel. Now, Israel is the other kingdom. Now, I think that probably Asa did take all the high places out of Judah. It did mention he had taken them out of the city. I don't know, remember the tabernacles, the places that people went to worship God were called high places too. So I don't think those were removed, and perhaps he didn't remove all the high places from out of Judah, but it says here that we're not taken out of Israel. And nevertheless, the heart of Asa was perfect all his days. Now remember this. I want you to remember this particular statement. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was perfect all his days. We're going to find out that even somebody whose heart is perfect can do bad things. Verse 18, and he brought into the house of God the things that his father had dedicated, and that he himself had dedicated, silver and gold and vessels, and there was no more war until the 35th year of the reign of Asa. So he took the things that were dedicated by his father, Rehoboam, and the things that he had dedicated, and he put them back into the house of God, and he put them into the king's house also. Gold and silver and other precious vessels. Now, also notice in verse 19, there were no more war unto the 35th year of the reign of Asa, which is getting close to the end. He reigned for 41 years, and this is getting fairly close to the end of his reign. Anyway, verse 16, we see where things start to go bad. In the 36th year of the reign of Asa, now, Baasha is what I've been calling this guy. And I have been wrong. Apparently it's either Baasha is the root word, or Baasha is possibly the proper name. Now, the root word Baasha means something that stinks or something that's offensive. Now we know that Baasha was a stinker, so he had the proper name for him. But anyway, in the 36th year of the reign of Asa, Baasha, king of Israel, now this is the other kingdom, came up against Judah and built Ramah to the intent that he might let none go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. So he set up a siege. Now, this is again, like I told you, this is where things are going to start going bad. Verse 2, Then Asa brought out silver and gold out of the treasures of the house of the Lord and of the king's house, and sent to Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus, saying, There is a league between me and thee, as there was between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent thee silver and gold. Go, break thy league with Baasha, king of Israel, that he may depart from me. So, he takes the precious stuff that he had just placed, a year ago, into the house of God and the king's house, and he gives it to the king of Syria. And he says, you need to break your league with Israel and make a league with us, Judah. Anyway, and verse 4, And Ben-Hadad hearkened unto King Asa, and sent the captains of his armies against the cities of Israel, and they smote Ijon and Dan and Abimaim, and all the store cities of Naphtali. So, okay, he took the money. Basically, he's a paid fighter. I can't remember what they call him, but anyway, he get paid to go out and wage war for Judah against Baasha and the nation of Israel. Anyway, it says here they smote Ijon. Now these are cities, Ijon and Dan and Abimaim and all the store cities of Naphtali. So they took a lot of stuff, especially in the store cities. This is where things were stored up. This is where they kept provisions and stuff like that. So Israel lost a great deal because of this. In verse 5, And it came to pass when Baasha heard it, that he left off building of Ramah, and let his work cease. So when he found out, that the king of Syria had broken his league with him, and he had come and attacked the cities of Israel, and had taken a lot of plunder apparently here, that he left off building Ramah and let his work cease. In other words, he just skedaddled. So what happens then? Then Asa the king took all Judah, and they carried away the stones of Ramah and the timber thereof, wherewith Baasha was building, and he built therewith Geba and Mizpah. Now, I looked, and these two cities were already in existence. So I think this is a kind of a rebuild type of situation. He took all these stones, and as mentioned in 1 Kings, they built the two cities, or rebuilt these two cities with the stones from Ramah, which was one city that Baasha was building. So, okay, sounds good, right? Everything worked out the way it was supposed to. No, that's not the way things were supposed to be. In verse 7, And at that time, Hanani the seer, also prophet, anyway, at that time Hanani the seer came to Asa, king of Judah, and said unto him, Because thou hast relied on the king of Syria, and not relied on the Lord thy God, therefore is the host of the king of Syria escaped out of thine hand. Basically, he's telling him, you don't know who the enemy is. It's kind of like nowadays. A lot of times, people that are supposed to be our friends act more like enemies than they do friends. And we're going to get to it here, but they had just won a great victory not that many years ago. Anyway, he tells him, because thou hast relied on the king of Syria and not relied on the Lord thy God, which we should always rely on, Therefore is the host of the king of Syria escaped out of thine hand. So your real enemy has escaped because of what you've done. In verse 8, were not the Ethiopians and the Libyans a huge host, and very many chariots and horsemen? Yet because thou didst rely on the Lord, he delivered them into thine hand. Now if you remember, it's talking about this in 1 Kings. There was 1 million Ethiopians, and I believe, I can't remember for sure, but I think it was 3,000 chariots. And because they trusted in the Lord, matter of fact, I believe that Asa said it was a small thing for the Lord. And it is. We need to trust the Lord with everything. That he said, yet because thou didst rely on the Lord, he delivered them into thine hand. You remember they took a lot of spoil too. There was a great bunch of things that were offered up, offerings made unto the Lord. And anyway, they also made a pact or a league with the Lord. Because of this great battle that the Lord fought for, and that he had delivered the Ethiopians into their hand. You remember Israel went out and fought, and after the battle was over, did they go out and they try to take other lands? No, they went back home. They went back home. Anyway, in verse 9, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in the behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward him. Now, I'm going to stop there. I normally don't like reading part of a verse, but this is kind of a separation there. What does this mean? It means you can't go anywhere where the eyes of the Lord aren't on his children. He will be there. He will protect you whatever way. I mean, you might lose the battle. You might lose your life. But he's going to be there for you wherever you're at if you're one of his children. And his eyes go to and fro, run to and fro throughout the whole earth. There's no place that they can put you that he can't be there for you. We need to trust the Lord throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in the behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward him. That's us. Now, we are not always perfect. Asa is finding this out right now. You remember back over here in chapter 15, verse 17, the last part of that says, nevertheless, the heart of Asa was perfect all his days. Perfect Asa. Right? Not so much. We're perfect in the Lord, not in our own self. If you put confidence in yourself, if you put confidence in money, if you put confidence in a person, anything you put confidence in other than the Lord, I'll guarantee you it's going to let you down at some point in time. Only the Lord is able to always be there for you. Wherever you're at. You can't be someplace that the Lord's not there. It goes on in the last part of verse 9, herein thou hast done foolishly. Therefore from henceforth thou shalt have wars. Now you remember, over here in chapter 15, verse 19, there was no more war until the 35th year of the reign of Asa. So that was a long time. But now, because of his foolishness, from that point forward, he was going to have wars. So, Asa then, he fell on his face and he asked the Lord to forgive him, and no. perfect Asa here, remember. Verse 10, then Asa was wroth with the seer, or the prophet, and put him in a prison house, for he was in a rage with him because of this thing. And Asa oppressed some of the people the same time. So, instead of being mad at himself for doing foolishly, he had taken the things that were dedicated to the house of God and used them as booty and gave them to the king of Syria. And he had put his confidence, put his faith in his enemy. But he was wroth with the seer. He was angry. He was more than angry. It says here he was in a rage. He was in a rage with him because of this thing. And it was his fault. Now you remember, kind of a same situation. They were being attacked by the Ethiopians, which had a far, far bigger army. Far more chariots. And actually, they weren't even being attacked yet. If you remember, they were just building a city to keep people from going in and coming out of Jerusalem. But he was in a rage because of this thing. So he put the seer, or the prophet, in a prison house. Now, I don't know if that means actual prison. I think it does. Or whether it means he was under house arrest, but it says he was in a rage, so I'm pretty sure it probably meant he was actually in prison. And the last part here, and Asa oppressed some of the people at the same time. Now, why did he do that? Well, there's a lot of different opinions on that. Well, not a lot, actually, at least 2 or 3. But one is that people were angry. Some were angry because he had made a league with Syria. And the other one is that some were angry because of the way he was treating the prophet. The prophet was doing what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to instruct the king in the ways that God would have him to go and what he would have him to do. So not only did he put the prophet in prison, it says he oppressed some of the people at the same time. So, anyway, you'd think that after a while his rage would go down and he would see that he did wrong. But no. Verse 11, and behold, the acts of Asa, first and last, lo, are they written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. And Asa, and in the 39th year of his reign, was diseased in his feet, until his disease was exceeding great. So, was this a punishment? I believe it probably was. I believe it was. It was not only a punishment, it was something to instruct him maybe even. But Asa didn't learn a thing. And the last part of verse 12 says, yet in his disease he sought not to the Lord, but to the physician. Now there's nothing wrong with going to the doctor. If you're sick, you need to go to the doctor. But you need to let somebody else know that you're sick so they can pray about it. You need to pray about it. I mean, if a lot of times doctors are able to do things that they're not really good enough to do. I know that for a fact. I've seen things like that happen in my life, and I've seen things happen in Connie's life. And others, where doctors were, according to them, they fixed it. But, they weren't really able to. But anyway, this is the 39th year, so we've got 2 more years to go. And he comes down with a disease in his feet, Now, Gill says it was probably gout. I don't know how he figured this out, but he's a pretty smart man, but I'm going to say he was diseased in his feet. And we'll go with that. And until his disease was exceeding great, it kept getting worse. And Asa still didn't turn to the Lord. He turned to the doctors. So finally, the end comes. Verse 13, and Asa slept with his fathers and died in one of the 40th year of his reign. So in 41 years, he reigned in Judah. And they buried him in his own sepulchres. Now you notice this is plural. So it was set up for his family. As they passed away, they were to be buried there with him, which he had made for himself in the city of David, and laid him in the bed which was filled with sweet odors and divers kinds of spices prepared by the apothecary's art. So, even as Asa had turned away from the Lord, so to speak, I don't think he totally turned from the Lord. I think he just put some of his trust in other things. And we do that sometimes. We do that sometimes. How important does a thing have to be before you bring it up before the Lord? Not that important. At least, to our way of thinking. We need to seek the Lord's will in our life in every matter. Not just the major things. But it says here they laid him in a bed filled with sweet odors and divers kinds of spices prepared by the apothecary's art. So they laid him down there, and it was a sweet smell. Instead of the smell of death, it was a sweet odor as his spirit went to be with the Lord. Now, how do I know he went to be with the Lord? Go back to chapter 15, verse 17. Nevertheless, the heart of Asa was perfect all his days. Perfect in the Lord because of the Lord. Even when he was in error. And we're all going to fail. We're going to fall flat on our face from time to time. But it's not our goodness, it's not our greatness that makes us perfect in all of our ways. It's God that does that. And they made a very great burning for him. Now, they didn't burn his body. It wasn't a cremation type thing. It was, I need to turn the page here. But it says here that they, more than likely, they burnt flowers, odors. I think that's another name for flowers in this particular instance, and spices. And there's a couple of different ideas on that. Some say in his honor, and others say possibly an offering to God in Asa's stead. I think it's probably the first, because there's another portion of Scripture that talks about that. I think it's in Jeremiah. Don't know, but anyway, it's in the honor of the individual that has died. Anyway, you can take that whichever way you want to. Anyway, in 2 Chronicles 17 and verse 1, and Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead and strengthened himself against Israel. So Asa's gone away. Jehoshaphat's going to reign in Judah. He's going to strengthen himself against Israel. And next week, hopefully, we'll start studying about some of the kings of Israel and get caught up. And anyway, everybody stick around about 2 or 3 minutes. Brother McCool is going to start preaching morning service, and I know you don't want to miss that.